Hello interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and for today's video, I figured I'd do something kind of fun and do another tier ranking list, this time of the Star Wars franchise. It's been a hot minute since I've done one of these tier ranking lists. I think the last one that I did was the Marvel MCU and everything that had come out at that point about a year or so ago, and I always enjoy doing these sort of tier lists because it's just kind of fun to rank things and put things up against each other, and I figured, I've been kind of lukewarm on the Star Wars franchise for the past few years, mostly because, while I've generally enjoyed most of the Star Wars stuff coming out of Disney, it's felt very lukewarm, mostly because of Disney's sort of need to let's just push all this product and just make all these things that sort of delve into nostalgia and stuff like that. And, there's not been, it's not been completely a wash. I mean, I've still liked stuff about certain elements of the Obi-Wan show and Mandalorian, but overall I haven't been super enthused about it. But recently, my Star Wars fandom has been super ignited by Andor, because Andor, if you have not been watching my reviews of that show, is easily, I think, not only one of the best pieces of Star Wars media Disney has ever made, but one of the best pieces of Star Wars media ever, and easily one of my favorite shows of this year. It is in contention. I'm making my list right now for end of the year, my top 10 sort of things. Andor is definitely going to be in there and might even be towards the top, if not at the top, of my favorite TV show of this year, which I never would have thought a Star Wars Disney show would do. So I've just been kind of going back into my hyper obsessive mode, whenever, welcome to my autistic brain, whenever I find something that I really enjoy in a franchise that I kind of enjoyed, it sort of sparks this neurodivergent tendency in my brain to be oh my god, yes, I love this thing again, and I start hyper consuming all of this stuff, and I've been a fan of Star Wars since I was a little kid, so I've, again, welcome to my neurodivergent brain, seen every single piece of Star Wars animated media and live action media that's ever been made, for the most part. There's some things here, they're the Lego Star Wars movies and things, they did a Lego Star Wars holiday special thing and a Halloween one. I think that I have not watched those. I'm not that hyper obsessive, though. To a degree now, I kind of want to watch those. Anywho, so yeah, no, I just figured it would be fun to do a tier ranking list, especially because I'm also right now working on, just to give you all a tease, a really big video with my friend Aronok to do a video that is the politics of Star Wars, and I mean really getting into the neoliberalism political bent of the series that it sort of developed over the years from the anti-establishment tendencies that George Lucas started it with, and then being sold to Disney and all that stuff. It's going to be a really fun video. I'm very excited about it. It's going to be 2 videos because the second one's going to be all about Star Wars Andor and things like that. Anyways, I'm over talking about all of this and setting up a simple tier ranking list too much. Long story short, I'm really excited about Star Wars. I've got more Star Wars content coming. I'm hyper-obsessing about it right now. So I figured, let's just have some fun and do a tier ranking list and just, rank things. Before I get into the tier ranking list, I just want to make very, very clear that this is just for fun. This is just off the cuff. And, as with any ranking list that I do, it is not meant to be taken, as my end-all, be-all word on something. Also, my opinions shift over time, so something that I like more now, maybe I'll like less or even better in the future. It also may change depending on seasons of things that come out, because we might get more Mandalorian seasons, Andor seasons, those are definitely coming, and we might get more of other things. So this is just where I'm at right now in a very laid back sense. And yeah, things may shift and change as we go forward. But with that said, let's dive into the tier ranking list. Alright, so here we are at the tier ranking list. Like I said, I'm going to be ranking every single Star Wars live action and animated series, canonical or non-canonical, that I have seen. So that is pretty much all of it, except for, again, some of the random things like the Lego Star Wars stuff that I have not seen. So, let's get into it. Starting off, we have the seminal Star Wars A New Hope Episode 4. This is a classic, and I think, do I really even have to say too much about it? It goes in S rank. It, changed cinema forever, created it didn't create the idea, that was more Jaws, but it sort of cemented the idea of the modern blockbuster, for better or worse, in our modern media. It was a really, fun space adventure that also had a lot of, anti-fascist, anti-authoritarian, and anti-establishment stuff in it. So, it's an absolute classic. And also, just so y'all know, I'm going to be ranking these in, the ranks first, and then I'll go through at the end and sort of put them in their places against each other and sort of rank them that way. So you'll have to wait to the end to see what I put at number 1. Let's go next. These are sort of out of order, but let's do Empire Strikes Back next. Again, another S rank. It is darker than the original. I mean, these things have been analyzed to that. Like, it's darker than the original. It sort of evolves the franchise in a really cool way. The classic moment of, like, Luke, I am your father. It's just, like, come on. And then also, like, the Leia's, like, Han stuff. I must always hear is like, I know. It's like, oh, you roguish bastard, you. It's another fantastic film that deservedly, like, it's so hard to, like, follow up, especially at that time, to, like, make a sequel that did better or, like, improved upon or, like, stayed as interesting as the original, and this did that, and it's honestly fantastic. Let's go to Return of the Jedi. You know, these are, like, not controversial opinions at all, I'm sure. Like, we'll get more into the controversial stuff as we get into, like, the Disney era of things. Where is Return of the Jedi on this little thing here? Nope, that's not it. Where are you hiding from me? Okay, I was gonna say, did I not put it in this tier rank? Okay, here it is. Okay. Here's where things might actually getting controversial, though. Because Return of the Jedi, obviously, like, a lesser, more messy film than A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But also, it is one that I think there is a lot of excellent stuff in it still. Like, the cross-cutting battles in the finale sequence in space, between Luke and Darth Vader, and then on the ground on Andor, is all really, like, just awesome to, like, just see those 3 stages of action all cutting with each other. I do think, like, the space stuff is almost the least interesting, just because I love Lando now, but when you first watch the film, is like, he's the character you care about the least, so you're more invested in the other two. And it's also sort of like a redo of A New Hope, where they're sort of entering into the Death Star. So there is that element of it. Also, the Ewoks, I have a big affinity for them, but it can also be seen as, like, a lot of people think it's annoying, but I'm going with my feelings on it. So I will have to say there is an element of nostalgia in this, but I have to give Return of the Jedi, I'm, like, debating between a B or an A. I'm going to give it an A. It's definitely not up there with these two. So it needs to be at least a step down. I think maybe if, like, I was really trying to grade without my own, like, trying to be unbiased about it, which you can never do as a critic, I would probably put it as a B, but, like, with someone with nostalgia for this film and just, like, a lot of the fun stuff. Also, the Jabba stuff is fun. You also got Leia in a metal bikini. Yeah, it's a bit like, oh, look at the hot, pretty lady, but I like looking at the hot, pretty lady. Blame my bisexual butt. It's just the thing. And also, she like kills Jabba. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, I think I'm gonna put it at A, even though my brain says probably should be a B. But let's put it at A for now. Maybe I'll shift that as we go. All right, moving on. We have some of the animated Star Wars things. So I'll be honest, I did watch. So I have Star Wars droids here, and we're gonna also do the Ewok ones as well, and the Ewok TV show. I did watch these. It has been a long time, to be very fair with you. I watched these as a kid, and I probably saw every episode or close to, or at least a good amount of them. Let's just put these at, like I said, I'm trying to vaguely remember this. I remember it being, like, kind of like a fun buddy sort of cop thing with the droids, with the two of them. I'm going to put it at a D. I'm going to be honest, I don't remember it super well, so people yell at me. I'm just have it on this list because why not? So if you like, Jessie, this was an underrated gem. I don't remember, but I'm still having it on this list. Yell at me if you wish. It's my list. I'll do it with what I want. Let's also get into the other Andors, or the Ewok stuff. So there's the other Ewoks TV show. I'm going to also put it as a D. It's, like, the kid-friendly, like, trying to capitalize on Star Wars stuff, and it's just sort of, like, annoying. I think it was, like, what, the 90s that these were made? So, like, just kind of, like, sell toys sort of thing that without a ton of inspiration to it, if I recall. So I'm going to put that there. However, I will sort of also, we have the other, there's 2 Ewoks ones. There's the, this is the Battle for Andor one. That one's second. So Caravan of Courage. I'm actually going to put this at a D, but above these two for now, because this one I actually do remember just having a lot of fun with it. It's like adventures with the Ewoks and things like that. I actually like it. It's just like it's not great. You know what? Maybe even debating it being a C. I'll put it a D for now. Because what I'm also going to do is we have the Caravan of Courage, so that was Caravan of Courage. This is the battle for Andor? I forget what this one is exactly called, but it's like the second one. And it's actually it's like kind of The Empire Strikes Back. I do remember this because you have like Wilford Brimley going around, a bunch of characters get killed at the beginning of it. It's kind of like The Empire Strikes Back, and I think the first Caravan of Courage is like probably a more fun movie, but I think this one just like I don't know. I think that like this one sticks in my brain a little bit better because like Wilford Brimley running around yelling at people I like have a distinct memory for. So I'm gonna put that one there at C. Probably deserves to be at. Let's put it at the top of D for now. Maybe I'll come back to it. We'll come back to that. All right, moving on. Time for the prequel era stuff. All right, so here's where we're gonna start getting, I think, actually controversial here. Phantom Menace. Again, there's an element of nostalgia here because you have Darth Maul. Well, being a millennial, I grew up with Phantom Menace, and I have a lot of affinity for a lot of what this movie does, like Qui-Gon Jinn. You know, gotta love my Liam Neeson in there. Like literally seeing him in the Obi-Wan show, I was like, oh my god, it's Liam Neeson. It's great. So you have all that stuff, and like I have a bigger affinity for Jar Jar than other people because I was a kid at the time, and so Jar Jar didn't annoy me so much as like other people. But I have gone back, and unlike the Ewoks ones, where I have not gone back and rewatched them in a long time, I have seen Phantom Menace recently, relatively. And it does not hold up as much as I want it to, but I do have that nostalgia factor for it. So I'm going to put it at... And also there's still, like, the Duel of Fates. Darth Maul is fucking great. Let's put it at... I want to... You know, I think I have to push these down. I'm going to push this whole line down to an F, which sucks. Because I feel like this bet is better at a D? No, I think this is better here at a C. Oh, God, this is hard. I hate ranking. Why do I do this to myself? Yeah, I'm going to put this... Okay, I'm going to keep these at D. I'm going to have Phantom Menace at C, and we'll rank them from there. Moving on, though, because, like, we get to the Attack of the Clones. Which, again, it's another one that many people would say is worse than Phantom Menace, and I do think it is actually worse, but for me, this is actually the one that I have the most nostalgia for. Like, of all the 3 prequel movies, I actually weirdly have the most nostalgia for Clone Wars, because I loved the idea of clones as a kid, and I always loved, why am I blanking on the name of the planet with, The clone planet. For some reason, I'm blanking on the name of the planet. The planet where, like, we meet Jango Fett and Obi-Wan's on there fighting him. I also remember, like, loving exploring Coruscant, like, the underbelly of it. I'm, like, loved the Geonosis stuff. And, like, part of, like, my love for Geonosis is, like, remembering, like, the Star Wars Battlefront games. Like, if anyone remembers the Battlefront games and Geonosis in those games, I think was just a lot of fun, like, those levels. So, like, and also, if anyone remembers the Republic Commando games, like, I feel like a lot of my love for this movie comes mainly from, like, the aesthetic of it, and also my, like, love for media peripheral around it, that comes from it. So, like, again, it's just hard to divorce, like, love of Star Wars with my own personal affiliations with it. So I'm gonna put it at C. And I know that this is going to be the controversial choice. I'm going to put it above Phantom Menace for now. And we'll get back to seeing if I want to rearrange stuff later on. Getting back to the rest of these, we do have Revenge of the Sith. Clearly the best of the prequel movies. I don't even think that that's really a question. The question more is, do you put it at a B or do you put it at a C? I am going to put it at a B for now. Because I think that there's just some of the execution of this film is, like, wonky at best. Like, Anakin going and killing the younglings is dark, but then you're like, that's all you get to see Anakin / Darth Vader do in this movie. And you would have much rather, like, see him, like, actually kill some Jedi, which I think they actually, like, cut a sequence from the film that, like, had him kill one of the Jedi Masters, which I think would have been good to have in there. To show that he's not just, like, only thing he does is murder children. Not to say that doesn't, like, I think that that's a good choice for, like, to show how far he's fallen. But, like, it was just weird that was the only thing that he does besides go and fight Obi-Wan. And then there's just some, like, wonky dialogue here and there, and then, like, you have General Grievous as, like, a side thing for Obi-Wan to do, who, like, I love General Grievous, again, mostly on my nostalgia. He worked as, like, a thing being sold to me in my demographic as a kid. I'm like, look at him, he's cool. But you, like, go back and rewatch it, it's like, this is such a side story that just is there to get Obi-Wan away from the events of the rest of the film at that time. But I also just, like, and then also just the stuff with Padme and Anakin is just so bleh throughout all of this, and throughout the entire trilogy, to be fair. But the tone is great. Some of the action is really awesome. The emotional beats do hit when they do hit. So I've talked myself into a B with Revenge of the Sith. I think that that's a good place for it. All right, time to go back into some peripheral media. Okay, so we have Tartarovsky's Clone Wars series. I loved the crap out of this show so much. Like, I think there were, like, 5-10 minute episodes. I think season 1 was, like, a bunch of 5-minute episodes, and then season 2 had, like, 15-minute episodes. And, like, I have such distinct memories of so many of these. Like, the one where we get the battle underwater and the lightsabers are sort of, like, cackling, like just sort of, like, disintegrating the water, like, boiling the water around it is such a cool idea. The introduction of General Grievous, that we get to see before, like, that was my introduction to General Grievous, that episode where he's just, like, killing those Jedi in that one sequence where he, like, has the, like, like, he's just sort of balancing different lightsabers in, like, his foot and just, like, slowly knocks off these Jedi is terrifying, and such a great introduction to that character that made his appearance in Revenge of the Sith, where he's just, like, coughing and hacking a bunch, just kind of a little bit disappointing. Compared to this movie. And then, like, some of the stuff, like, Obi-Wan's, like, working with the clone troopers, and the, like weird tentacle, droid that, Obi-Wan has to fight at one point. The battle between Anakin and Asajj Ventress is kick-ass. I have to put this at an ass. We'll figure out where it fits in that, but, like, this is easily one of the best pieces of Star Wars media that has been made. I love Tartarovsky's Clone Wars series. It is fan-frickin-tastic. If you have not watched it, like, take an hour, 2 hours of your time and go watch it. It is not very long as a series, and it is all great. Like, the Asajj Ventress Anakin stuff is so good. And, like, presages his, like, fall to the dark side and everything. It's, chef's kiss. Chef's kiss with this series. I have not watched it in years, and yet it's still, like, ingrained. Like, those sequences are just ingrained in my brain, with how good it is. Moving on, I'm trying to think of what came next. Probably, we didn't even rank this. Star Wars The Holiday Special. Let's go in at F. Is that even, like it introduced Boba Fett, but it's clearly, like, a cynical money grab thing that exists just to, like, spend time in between, like, the movies and, like, keep Star Wars people fresh in people's minds. And, like, it's like, I love it in a cheesy way. Like, watching it with friends to, like, make fun of it is a joy. So it definitely is in that so bad it's good category as a film. Like, it is hilarious to watch you make fun of, but only, like, one time. Like, you can't, like, unlike some other so bad it's good movies that I've watched, like, where you can rewatch them a few times and, like, still get enjoyment of making fun of them, like The Room or something like that. This is one that you watch once and, like, never again. I'll make fun of it once, but, like, after that it's tedious as fuck. So Holiday Special F. I don't think there's, like I will be less like this piece of crap thing than other people are on it, but it, like, to argue it's good. No, there's no one, like, making that video essay like the Star Wars Holiday Special is good. Actually, I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure someone has made it, but it has to be, like, jest or sarcastic, because it's not. It's so bad it's good movie one time, and then after that, tedious. Okay, moving on. We do have the Clone Wars movie. So this is not the TV show. This is another one that I will put at. I'm gonna put it at. I'm trying to debate between top of D or bottom of C. I'm going to put it at bottom of C for now, because a lot of people are very harsh on these. It's basically, so this movie is the first 4 episodes of the Clone Wars series stitched together and then released in theaters to help sell the show. And, you know, a lot of people don't like it a lot. Like, the animation's somewhat wonky. The story is somewhat blah-y because you have, like, this little baby Jabba thing having to be, like, returned to its family. And so it seems very kiddie in the middle of this war scenario. But there are elements of it that I do really like. Like, some of the interactions between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka, I think are a lot of fun and, like, presage why Ahsoka becomes one of, if not my favorite character in all of Star Wars media. So I do actually really, really enjoy elements of this. Partially is just a building base for what would come later. And again, we do get the introduction of Ahsoka, who is great. So I'm going to put it at the bottom of C for now. It could be a D because it is kind of like a wonky blah sort of film. But it does sort of lay the foundation for stuff that I do really like later. So maybe that's probably pushing this up a little bit more than it is on its own terms, but I still have to kind of give it that to a degree. Moving on, let us go to the actual Clone Wars animated show proper. This is where it gets difficult because some of the stuff, like Clone Wars as a series, it oscillates so much between, like, excellent and, like, I don't think there's anything in it that's, like, abysmal. But there are some arcs, especially in the early seasons, that are like, meh, okay, this is fine. It's all right. But when it hits, like, this franchise, it, like, fills in some of the holes between 2 and 3 in such cool ways. Like, the way that we get explanation of why the clones turn on Order 60, do Order 66 when they do work with the Jedi for so long. Like, that storyline is tragic and heartbreaking. The Siege of Mandalore stuff is so good. The final few episodes that Disney made that sort of, like, finish out the series a few years ago are excellent. The Ahsoka Darth Maul stuff is so good. The stuff bringing back Darth Maul and the stuff with his brother and the Emperor Palpatine are sometimes fan servicey, but overall, like, really excellent. So I will say, like, some of the stuff in this series, especially, like, the final arc in the series, I think could be S tier. But because there are some things that do bring it down a little bit, I'm gonna put it in A. In fact, I'm gonna put it at the top of A for now. Because I think that, like, again, there are arcs and episodes of the show S tier. But because there's some stuff, and since I'm ranking it as a whole, like, if I was ranking specific arcs, I could do more delineation. For now, I'm just going to put it at A. Moving on, I think technically we get into the, the sequel trilogy movies next is technically what's released, but I'm going to go with Rebels. Maybe Rebels came first. I forget which, but I'm going to put Rebels at I'm trying to think like low A or high B. Let's go high B for now. I might rearrange that at the end. Because Rebels, I think, is a great show. I love the characters. I love, like, why am I blanking on, I'm blanking on their names because it's been a hot minute, but, like, I can remember the characters very well. Like, the Jedi Master, in it, who eventually becomes blind, he is such, like, a great mentor character. I really enjoy him. His death is heartbreaking. Ezra, is, like, right? It's Ezra, right? Yeah. That's the main character's name. People correct me in the comics, but, like, Ezra is, I think, a really interesting character as we go further, and I'm looking forward to seeing him, like, return in live action in the Ahsoka show that we're going to get. So I love all that, and then I love also the gaps that it feels like if Andor didn't exist, I would actually find, like, this show to be, like, a pretty decent, like, look at, like, the rebellion and how the rebellion evolved and things like that. Andor, I think, is, like, on another level. We'll talk about it when we get there. But I think, like, this, like, filled in that gap in a really decent way between 3 and 4. And also gave us, like, stuff with Ahsoka. Ahsoka's stuff with Darth Vader is great. Darth Maul's moment in this is so wonderful. His, like, small arcs that we get him appearing in this. I also love sometimes the restraint that this show had. I think there's that lightsaber duel between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan in this series. It's such a quick lightsaber duel. Like, you were thinking that you were going to get something epic. And it's just all this build up to, like, finally the showdown between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul. And yet it's such a quick battle. I think it's done in, like, a minute or less. but it encapsulates everything that needed to be in that fight between the two of them. It said everything that they needed to say, and how they both were harmed by the fall of the Empire as people, even though Maul is clearly a villain. He is also someone who was manipulated by the Emperor and Palpatine. And so they were both puppets in this grand scheme and both suffering trauma from it. Even though you don't want to forgive Darth Maul, you understand the tragicness of that moment. And it's such a restrained and moment and such brilliant writing. And there's like stuff between all of Rebels, and then also the exploration of some of the lore. Like it gets to some, like the final few episodes of this series get into some crazy stuff. If you have not seen the end of Rebels, which I'm like why it's like wild stuff that expands the lore of the Star Wars series a lot. And then some of the like the history of the Sith that we get into with this as well. Like some of the lore stuff in this series is excellent and like really cool to get to see. So I'm gonna put Rebels at a B, but you might see it at like a high A by the end of this. We'll see how it goes. Moving on though, let us get into some of the sequel trilogy. And this is where we might get some controversial rankings here. So Force Awakens. At the time that Force Awakens came out, I actually really liked it, because what it felt like was like kind of a statement by Disney, where it's like, look, we're going to, like, the prequels were these really controversial things that like people had some nostalgia for and liked, but we understand that they weren't really, really good. Like a lot of people just really hated them, except for Revenge of the Sith maybe giving a somewhat positive arc to that trilogy. But Force Awakens at the time felt like, okay, we're going to redo A New Hope. But we're going to redo it with, like, promises of, like, hints towards the future. Of, like, who is Snoke? Rey's parentage. Like, all of these different things that, like, would get explored in terrible ways. Like, it was so clear, like, now that we've reached the end of this trilogy, that Disney just did it just to make money and to capitalize off nostalgia and had no plan. They just, like, came in and was like, let's just make more Star Wars. And so had no real plan for this trilogy that, like, looking back on Force Awakens makes you think less of it. Because you think less of the entire sequel trilogy. And it is just a movie that, like, remakes A New Hope. And also, like, just doesn't do it with any, like, world-building thought. Like, what is the First Order? Right? Like, it's just the Empire again. But, like, there's no sense of, like, world-building brought to the First Order that, like, makes them make sense. And yes, there has been some media that has, like, helped move that forward with things like, I believe, like, the Jedi, or not Jedi Fallen Order, like, Star Wars Battlefront 2, the game has helped sort of, like, move over stuff with that. Some of the media, like The Mandalorian, has helped with that a little bit, to, like, sort of, like, smooth over the canon stuff between 6 and 7, some of the books as well. But, like, at the time, it's just sort of, like, I don't understand what the First Order is in relationship to, like, where the history of the Empire is again. And it just seems like, and it was very clear that they were just trying to, like, remake the status quo of A New Hope without really thinking about what that means. And so, but within that, though, there are some great things here. Like, getting to see Finn's and Rey's battle with Kylo Ren towards the end of the movie, and just showing the difference between Rey and Finn and their ability to stand up to Kylo, I think was just so cool. The visual of, like, the lightsabers cackling in the woods, and, like, it's just such a cool visual. The Finn as a character, as a concept, is so cool as well. Sadly not used very well, but the idea of a stormtrooper wishing to escape his lot in life because he is sort of traumatized by being part of the First Order is a cool idea. So I'm going to put Force Awakens as a below Rebels, but at a B, because I do think there's a lot of good here. But it's just one of those things, like, if I was ranking this when it came out, I would say it's an A, with, like, being like, I have hope for the future. But since time has gone on, I'm going to put it as a B right now. Speaking of which, The Last Jedi. Oh boy, this is gonna get controversial here, just because anytime anyone talks about The Last Jedi, it's always controversial. I will say this. For me, The Last Jedi contains some of the best sequences in all of Star Wars. Hands down. The fight between Kylo Ren and Luke Skywalker at the end is one of the most epic fucking sequences of all time. The fight between Kylo and Rey and Snoke's guards. so awesome to see. Some of the ideas in this film of like burning down the past is necessary in terms of like this movie being a attempt to course correct Star Wars after like this constant nostalgia that Disney was sort of going to, that Disney sort of denied later on and like said like, fuck The Last Jedi and fuck what it was trying to say thematically, because it was such a response to that nostalgia of the first movie. And then they went into The Rise of Skywalker, which sort of like refused The Last Jedi. But like I think this movie has such cool things to say, and I actually really like, and many people dislike Luke's story in this. I actually really like Luke's like disillusionment. I think it actually kind of fits with like the idea of like the recursive nature of these battles, of like constantly there's war, constantly there's a push between fascism, rebellion, and the Star Wars Empire, that I think like would cause disillusionment in him as a character, and I kind of liked that arc for him. But all that being said, I think The Last Jedi has some of the dumbest stuff in Star Wars too. So it has some of the best scenes and best moments and best ideas in all of Star Wars, but then you have like the dumb casino planet, and like how that whole plot works out is just dumb. Like they get thrown in jail because they parked their car wrong, and then they happen to meet the guy that they need, and then they happen to get in trouble with the Empire later. It's just like, it's just all coincidences and badly like thought out, even though the idea of like this planet of like weapons dealers is a cool idea. The whole stuff with why am I blanking on his name? Poe, is just also really frustrating, because it's just like, I hate plots that rely on people miscommunicating. And I get the idea of what they were trying to do with Poe, but like it just frustrated me, because it's like, if people just sat down and talked for a minute, none of this plot would be happening. And it makes Poe look like an idiot. And I understand you want to try and show like he needs to grow as a leader and start to like know his place in like trusting other people and when to like listen to others, but also like be able to take charge and not like at certain moments. So I love that idea, but then it just looks dumb and makes him look stupid because he's just rebelling and like causing trouble at a moment where like they need to be unified together, and it just makes your main character look really awful. I love seeing Leia get to have some cool moments in this, but it's also kind of silly in terms of like her floating through space. Like the idea, I understand it's cool, but it just looks dumb. So it ultimately makes The Last Jedi such a frustrating experience. Again, also in the context of the larger sequel trilogy as well. So it's just one of those, like, I'm going to have to put at the bottom of B. I might even be the top of C. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B, because I do think what's good in here is excellent. But it's also just put right next to some of the dumbest stuff too. So I'm going to put it at the low B. If I was ranking like elements of this separately, I'd say some of it's S tier, some of it's D tier. So just gonna sit right in the middle of it. Moving on though, I missed some of the other ones. Rogue One. At the time, there were things in Rogue One that stuck out to me that are emblematic of some of the problems that I would see with Disney going forward. Like the necromantic CGI, like resurrecting like dead actors to play roles, sort of things like Grand Moff Tarkin. And while Carrie Fisher wasn't dead at the time, like her being like the younger version of her was like creepy, and like threw me out a lot. And there is like an element of like we're playing with the action figures sort of moment, like the Darth Vader hallway fight, which is excellent, but there is also an element of it being like cool, look at this, like, look, Darth Vader is so cool, right? And then like just some moments where it's like Darth Vader watches Leia get away just to catch up with her, like what feels like 10 minutes later once you start A New Hope, if you watch this right afterwards. So there's that element of it. And then also just some of the storytelling is a bit wonky here and there. You can definitely tell that there were reshoots throughout the film. Some of the characters' arcs, like Jyn Erso's arc, is a little less stronger than I would have liked. Like she's very passive as a character throughout most of this. But that being said, some of the choices made in this, whether it was Gareth Edwards as a director or Tony Gilroy having come in and done reshoots on it, I think are really, really bold. The killing of all the characters at the end is such like, it's so emblematic of like what Star Wars kind of needed to tell, and what Andor, I think, as a series is even doing much better now. That I think like it just showcases like what people are willing to sacrifice to fight against fascism and to find community in others. And like, then also like the Krennic as a villain is such a fascinating villain. It's just like, he's just a middle manager trying to please his boss, and in doing so he creates and helps fund one of the biggest weapon of mass destruction ever made, but he's ultimately just a middle manager trying to please his boss. and he's ultimately so disposable that he dies by the very thing that he helped make, and that he was like pushing for. It just showcases like it humanizes like fascists, but not in a way that is sympathetic towards them, but like understands like how fascism works, and like it's just people just trying to like please their boss, and they're just like they've dehumanized others so much so that they don't give a crap. They're just like doing the system because that's what the system tells them to be. And so Krennic is such a weaselly little villain that I found fascinating as a character. Mads Mikkelsen is also really great in this. Andor is like, he's also wonderful. K2SO is great. Donnie Yen is so great. If you have not seen the Ip Man movies, I've seen Ip Man 1 through 3. I've not seen 4 yet, but he is so great in those movies and everything else I've seen him in, and he's fantastic here. His moments to shine are awesome. You really feel for his death. I'm blanking on his name. Bodhi the pilot. I forget his name. I might be misremembering that. The guy who gets like his brain sort of warped by the tentacle thing, which is creepy as all hell, is weird, but like his death is just so casual and offhanded. It's so tragic. Like, he just gets killed by someone accidentally throwing a grenade where he's at. It's just like moments like that are just like, oh, that is war. People just dying incidentally. He has this big moment and then just dies because someone just threw a grenade in there. It felt so cold and distant, and yet that's how it would be. I thought it was also great. Saw Gerrera, when I first watched the movie, I hated, but now sort of seeing what like Tony Gilroy was trying to say with this character about a man who like was been fighting the Empire for so long that he's just a hollow shell of himself because he's just lost so many times, and the mental toll that takes. So you're just like a kind of broken shell of who you were. I think it was just so interesting and sad to see Saw Gerrera at that state. Rogue One is a movie that I probably would have put at B, but now in future I have to put it bottom of A, but definitely an A. Rogue One, I think, is just such a great movie that has elements of it that like I see some of the problems that Disney would lean further and further into, but as it stands, I think the great here is really great. And it's by no means a perfect film, but one that I really appreciate so much, especially in the wake of some of the Disney choices after the fact. Going further, we have Solo: A Star Wars Story. This is one, again, if Rogue One is one that I appreciate more because of the choice that they let the filmmakers make in it, Solo is one that I'm like, I like despite the fact how much Disney tried to tamp down the filmmakers' vision. Like, originally there was the original directors of the movie who got kicked out because they weren't really feeling what like Disney saw Star Wars as. And it really feels like, and they brought in Ron Howard, who's this workman-like guy. So Solo really feels like a movie that could have been something special had they let filmmakers kind of have a vision for it, when then not tamp down on it to sort of make it fit the Disney Star Wars brand that they were trying to make, basing on all nostalgia and like how did Han Solo meet Chewie? How did Han Solo get his blaster? How did Han Solo get his name? Like that sort of like surface level nostalgia, like checkbox storytelling. That is really, really sad because like you can see moments of special stuff in here. Stuff with like Londo is so great here. I love the casting for him as Londo. He's so freaking great. People made fun of, I'm blanking on his name, the actor who plays Solo, blanking on his name off the top of my head, but people make fun of him, but I actually think he captured Harrison Ford's energy pretty decently, to be frank. And I love some of the ideas in this, like the idea with, Khaleesi. Well, I'm blanking on an actor's name, so I apologize. I'm doing this off the cuff here, but like Khaleesi's like role in this, I think is such a cool idea. I think like, if they had made like Darth Maul's appearance in this film like an after credit sequence, that would have been kind of fun. People make fun of the Kessel Run storyline, but I think there's some fun in there as well. And I love like Eldritch Horror monster demon stuff that you get to see in that. That's always sort of resonates with me. The droid stuff in here is creepy as all hell in the context of like all of Star Wars and their treatment of droids, but it's an idea that I'm like find fascinating, of a droid wanting to like rebel, but then their treatment of her is messed up. So like this is a movie that like I see so much potential in it, even amongst its like cynical like let's do a prequel with Solo as a character mindset, but then it's just sort of all tamped down by like Disney pulling away from unique visions and just trying to make a brand. And so I have to put it in C. And I'm going to put it above the Clone Wars animated movie, but below Clone Wars the movie, above Phantom Menace in my mind. I'm going to put it at the top of C. We'll put it at the top of C. It's better than Clone Wars. It's definitely got more entertaining bits. We'll put it at the top of the sea. Top of the sea. All right. Moving on. We then get into, let's do Resistance before we do before we do Rise of Skywalker. Did I put a Force Awakens in here twice? Oh, this is the Rise of Skywalker poster. I'm gonna put Force Awakens where it's supposed to be because I was talking about Force Awakens there. Anywho, moving on. Resistance. Not a good show, I don't think. Maybe people will yell at me about that, but like, it was just such a show that, like, you could tell it was just Disney being, let's still have an anime. We finished Rebels, we finished Clone Wars, let's just have an animated Star Wars show that exists right now. And it was just such a kid-focused-y show, and, like, there's ideas in it that I really liked. I liked the representation in the show, and I like that element of it. I like the idea of, like, this station that's sort of like he's trying to be a spy, trying to figure out stuff with the First Order. But it ultimately kind of become, like, spinning in such a lot of ways. It ultimately felt like it was just, like, there's these little, like, sidetracks that try to tie into, like, Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi. But it always sort of felt, like, cynically motivated. So, yeah, I don't really like Resistance, and it feels kind of dull and boring and just perfunctory in a lot of ways, but there's some stuff that is good about it, but for the most part, it's just not that great. I'm going to put it above Phantom Menace, but below Attack of the Clones within this, because I think there's some good in there, but it's just doesn't really hit for me. All right, now let's go to the Rise of Skywalker. It's a greatest hits movie. It's just like, let's go through the Star Wars greatest hits to finish out this, like, the Skywalker franchise, and it's done in such a dumb way of, like, here's a billion ships, here's Emperor Palpatine, he was Snoke all along, look at all this nostalgia, look at these things that you remember, and then just denying good ideas of, like pushing aside Johnny Boyega, which is deeply upsetting, partially because of, like, it was clearly a response to, like, some of the anti-SJW folks, whether they intended it or not, to, like, the anti-SJW folks sort of ranting about The Last Jedi, as well as, like, pushing him down for international markets, and not to blame, and I want to be very clear, I'm not blaming, like, you know, China for, like, oh, they're not having a black character. Like, racism is a very much part of America, and so to, like, implicate it as, like, an external thing that caused, like, these choices is, like, I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to, like put that on like, blame China, even though I'm sure, like, thinking in that way was a part of, like, Disney strategy, but, like, it also is a response to a lot of, like, internalized racism that were, like, anti-SJW types were pushing on this film. Also the treatment of why am I blanking on her name? Rose Tika. I'm blanking on the actress's name, but the actress who played her was also atrocious, and Disney not standing up for either her or Johnny Boyega in the face of all that is absolutely disgusting. So, like, that's behind the scenes stuff, not in the movie itself, but, like, there's just all of it, like, points to just the cynical nature of this film. And I'm not going to say that there's not fun stuff that I have, and if I, like, turn my brain off and, like, kind of have that so bad it's good moment of, like, look, I guess Palpatine's going to summon a billion ships from nowhere, and they all have Death Star lasers, and look, there's a billion ships all fighting at the end, and, like, there's some of the stuff, but, like, the interaction between Poe, Finn, and Rey are actually a lot of fun in this film. Like, I actually kind of enjoy their polyam fam that they kind of create there. So I don't want to say it's complete and utter wash as a film, but you just see all the cynicism behind it that, like, really kind of came out after the response to The Last Jedi from Disney, and I really can't, like, put it higher because of that. But there is some fun to be had. But I will put it at below Phantom Menace, just because, well, I think overall Rise of Skywalker is probably like more tonally, more qualitatively consistent film than Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace has much more earnest highs, like the Duel of the Fates, than this movie does. So I'm gonna put it there. Because that feels appropriate to me. All right, we're getting towards the end here. We have up next, let's do The Mandalorian. This is another one that, like, you see some interesting intentions with this film, or with this series. And when the series shines, I think it does really, really shine. Especially in season 2, there are some really cool ideas with, like, developing good old Mando and Baby Yoda as a character, Grogu as a character, and their relationship, I think, is really interesting. And I do see some like really cool filmmaking artistry on display, like the battle with the crate dragon in season 2 is so cool. So yeah, there are really just some great elements of this show. But it also still reminds me a lot of the Disney's cynical nature of like banking on nostalgia. And you can really feel like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni in this series like kind of being like, oh, we get to play with all the toys. And in a way that's like, let's bring in Luke Skywalker. Let's bring in these characters from Clone Wars. Look, and like season 2 is like this, like here's let's see Katie Sackhoff's character from Clone Wars in live action. Let's see Ahsoka in live action. Just like let's see Luke Skywalker in live action. Like, oh, isn't that so cool? It's just a lot of that, like, again, like cynical nostalgia stuff that like I really, if this show really felt like it was more of its own thing, I would like it a lot more, because when it does shine, but it does have that cynical mindset within some of it that just kind of bums me out a bunch sometimes, because I'm just like, I just see the Star Wars Disney brand trying to do all the fan service here that like Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are kind of influencing as people, because they kind of want to play with, they have this reverence for Star Wars and they want to play with all the toys. And it kind of felt a little bit diminishing of what Dave Filoni had done in things like Clone Wars and done his own thing with those series. So, you know, I like Mandalorian, but I don't love it. So I'm gonna put it as B, and I'm gonna put it right below Rebels for me, but above Force Awakens. Moving on, let's go to Bad Batch next. Bad Batch is another show that like I like a decent amount. There's stuff in it that I enjoy. I love Omega. I love the interaction between our main characters. I love some of the like early days of the fall of the Republic into the Empire and like seeing those shifts in there. But also some of the episodes just kind of feel a little bit dull to me. Not bad, not awful, but I'm just sort of like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, that's a good episode. Yeah, it's good. So like I love some of the like the world building aspects and the characters in Bad Batch. I actually really, really love. And some of the like early shift from Republic to Empire in it, I really, really love. But some of the episodes themselves, I found a little bit dull. So like looking as a whole, I really like it. Individually, episodes, I kind of like, it's fine on at least season 1, which is where we're at when I'm doing this list. So I'm going to put it at B, but I'm going to put it right below Force Awakens. Yeah, I'll put it right below Force Awakens. Next, I'll put up Star Wars Visions. So this is the anthology, non-canonical, like, I believe, Japanese animation influenced and made series. And this was a lot of fun. I loved some of the stuff in it. And I love some, like, the unique animation styles and stories that were told in it. However, I do think a lot of them were, like, a little bit repetitive. Like, it's all focused on Jedi. It's all, like, ending in big lightsaber battles. Like, a lot of these were lightsaber battle-y stuff. Which I think is disappointing because you could have done some really interesting things with some of these stories. And not to say that there weren't, but a lot of it just, like, ends in lightsaber battles. So I think it ultimately becomes a little bit dull, just watching them over and over again, even though I do like some of the different animation styles and some of the different stories. So I'm going to also put this at a B. But I'm going to put it... I'm going to put it above Force Awakens, below Mandalorian. That feels appropriate. Oh boy. Book of Boba Fett. Or as we like to call it sometimes, Star Wars The Mandalorian Season 2.5. Because that's what it felt like a lot of times. There are some good ideas in this show. Like, really good ideas. Like, I love some of the stuff of, like, connecting Boba Fett's journey with the Tusken Raiders, and like talking about like indigenous folks sort of pushing back to reclaim their land, and like it's an indigenous person, like an indigenous actor, like actually like representing that in that story. There is an element of like, oh, this sort of like quote unquote civilized person being able to articulate and like teach the Tusken Raiders. So there is a little bit of that like westernized or advanced sort of culture, quote unquote, coming to the less primitive culture and saving them. But also you have to also recognize the actor's role in that too, and like his background too, and also the characters, Boba Fett's background as well, and his arc that you've seen him going through Clone Wars. So I think like some of that stuff, it's like complicated but interesting, and I think that that's some of the cool ideas. And I like some of the ideas of like Boba Fett is a character who's like trying to build a community and a coalition instead of like, I'm gonna come in here and rule. It's like, I can build a community mindset and like not ruled by fear or force, but by making this a beneficial thing for everybody as we work as bounty hunters. So like that is a theme I really, really love. But then it also, just like The Mandalorian, especially at the end, it becomes a lot of big action figures fighting each other. We bring in the character, the bounty hunter from Clone Wars, and we kill him off here. It's cool seeing him in live action, but it's just like, it just all feels very. Again, you feel that cynical mindset of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we got to see the Rancor run around Mos Eisley? Wouldn't that be awesome? And not to say it isn't, but again, you just feel that cynicism. And then also the fact that this does become like distracted from Boba Fett's story to like tell Mandalorian season 2.5 and have all the Luke Skywalker Ahsoka stuff. And just the creepiness of what they did with Luke Skywalker of like, the AI de-aging stuff and like using an AI voice for him, like mixed with Mark Hamill stuff, was just creepy. And I am not here for that at all. Like, please move away from that. As much as I love Mark Hamill and seeing his face, like, recast. It's okay to recast people. I know they got a kind of a bad taste in their mouth from it from Solo: A Star Wars Story, but like, I'd prefer actors getting to like play these characters instead of like necromantically trying to recreate another actor's performance with AI. It's just weird to me. So yeah, Book of Boba Fett. It's definitely going in C, towards the bottom of C. I'm gonna put it right at the bottom. Yeah, I'm gonna put it right at the bottom of C. There are elements in this that I like, but overall, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Another one that has a lot of cynical stuff in it. And I will say there's a lot of wonky storytelling throughout this series. And also some of the direction and filmmaking in it is weird. Especially like you see, I think it's episode 3 where it's the first Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan fight. And like some of the beats in that fight are great. Like Darth Vader shoving Obi-Wan into the fire and everything is like awesome. But then it's also like blocked weirdly. Like I still can't get out of my head that scene where like Obi-Wan like sees Darth Vader in the dark and then just goes off to the side. It's just like, why did you block it that way? And then you have Reva, who I think is an interesting character, but if any of you have played Jedi Fallen Order, there is another Inquisitor character in Jedi Fallen Order, the main villain of that game, that is essentially Reva, but way more interesting. like Reva is a discount version, I forget her name, but the discount version of that character. Like, both characters are interesting as, like, Inquisitors who, like, are trying to push their trauma that they felt at the end of Order 66 onto the world without realizing that the real problem is the Empire that they are serving, because they can't bring down the Empire, then they have to work for it. It's the only place they're allowed to survive. The only way they can survive is if they still have to process that trauma and they sublimate it on other people. So Reva as a character is fascinating, but not as well written as the one from Jedi Fallen Order. And it feels bad to say, because if I didn't have that juxtaposition with the character from Jedi Fallen Order, I would say Reva would be a much more interesting character member, but I do have that juxtaposition of like a slightly better written version of that character that exists. And so I see Reva as slightly lesser than what she could have been. I do like young Leia. I think young Leia is kind of interesting, but again, you can sort of see the cynical mindset in it. And then just some of the weird, wonky, like, story beats within this, and, like, some of the filmmaking being kind of weird, I think was kind of blah. But then there are really great moments, like the final fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin, so good. And the shot where you have half of Darth Vader's face and half of Hayden Christensen's face, and their voices mixed together, so clever, so awesome, so cool. And I think it really just emotionally hits the beats that I wanted that to hit with a fight between these two characters at the end. So I think it's a show that, like, kind of is at, like, I wish it was better, but when it hits. But I wish it was better than it was. So I'm going to put it at the bottom. I'm going to put it at the bottom of B. I'll put it above Revenge of the Sith. Yes. Do I put it above Bad Batch is the question. I'll put it above Bad Batch for now, but it'd be close in my mind. Yeah, I think right about there. I think maybe my nostalgia for Ian McGregor and Hayden Christensen would put it a bit above Bad Batch, and I think that's probably why I'll put it there. Also, I realized after I edited this video that I missed Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, the recent anthology series that just came out, that was done in the animation style of the Clone Wars TV series. I really, really liked this show. It was just a quick, short thing, only 6 episodes, each one only 15 minutes long, and was mainly focused on Count Dooku and Ahsoka. And while I enjoyed the Ahsoka stuff within the show, I thought it was enjoyable and showed a little bit of her connection between Anakin and a little bit of her backstory in life, and I thought that was great, especially since Ahsoka is quite honestly my favorite character in all of Star Wars, or close to. What I thought was the real standout of this anthology series was Count Dooku, and getting to see his backstory and why he decided to turn against the Jedi and join not only the Separatists but Emperor Palpatine, and his disillusionment with the Republic system. I thought it was actually a really, really great understanding of how like people come to recognize how systems like the Republic, how like a failing democracy like that ultimately just really focuses on benefiting those in power and the aristocracy rather than actually helping its citizens, and how that sort of can lead people into being radicalized either into more rebellious movements and trying to like help people and try to help those communities, or sometimes into more authoritarian fascism, like we got to see with Anakin in the Star Wars movies. But I think Count Dooku's descent here is really, really great. Also, we got some Yaddle stuff. Like, Yaddle got to actually be pretty cool. And also, the funny thing with Yaddle is, like, she speaks normally, so it's just, like, I guess just Yoda just speaks like that, just kind of funny. So, for all of that, I would place Tales of the Jedi, like I said, the Ahsoka stuff would probably be, like, B tier, but I think Count Dooku stuff is A tier. So, I would put it right here, right below Rogue One in the A tier, as just a really solid series. The Ahsoka stuff probably bringing it down a little bit more, but overall, the Count Dooku stuff is just really great, and the Ahsoka stuff is solid enough. So, yeah, that's where I put Tales of the Jedi. All right. Last thing is we have Star Wars Andor. I'm not even going to like ramble about it. Like Star Wars Andor S tier easily. Because like I said, this show is everything that I wish Disney Star Wars had been from the top. It is eschewing a lot of nostalgia. It is telling a story that is so politically targeted. It is using Star Wars as like a way to tell something prescient about today, while also drawing upon historical examples of things. It is a show that is about like, how do we spark this revolution? It sort of pushes against some of the like Joseph Campbell like monomyth sort of storylines about Andor being like, his whole thing is like he's denying that call to adventure as a character, and that like Joseph Campbell's monomyth sort of always tells us to be, and it sort of deconstructs that monomyth, but then gives the monomyth to characters like Cyril Karn, you know, and showing like how sometimes the monomyth thing is ultimately used to uphold like fascistic individualistic narratives, when really the way to fight fascistic authoritarian empires is through community and through community building and trying to find and trying to build coalitions and trying to build solidarity with each other. And Andor is a character coming to realize that, like him constantly being a passive character until he ultimately makes the choice to become an active one in this like he's in a fascistic empire that just tells him to be a passive one. He doesn't want to get involved in the fight, and the show is all about making him make that active choice to get involved. And I think that that's such a cool idea. It really showcases a lot of what like Star Wars can be and should be, and I think really starts to push back against some of the problems that I've seen in Disney Star Wars and also all of Star Wars since the beginning, as a series that wanted to try to be anti-establishment. So I think for that, Andor is definitely S tier. It might be recency bias, and y'all might hate me. I kind of want to put it at the top. Some people might be like, that's sacrilegious against the original Star Wars, but like, and again, it might just be recency bias. But quite frankly, I think it might be the best thing Star Wars has ever done. If you know, I think the only thing that for me we might put these other two above it is just like they were the templates, they were the originals, they are classics for a reason. They influenced so much of film history in a way that Star Wars Andor hasn't. So in that way, I think like you could put it above those two. And but for me, I think personally, and what I resonate with in terms of storytelling and how well this show is articulating a lot of what I've wanted Star Wars to be for so long over these past few years, it has to be at top of S for me. But I also understand if you don't put it there, but for me, I think it is S tier no matter what. So, last thing that I will do to sort of round out this video is just like look through this and see if there's anything I want to rearrange here in terms of my ordering. Holiday Special stays there. I think I actually meant to put this there, not below everything. I think it got messed up somewhere along the line. So I think like this ordering with Battle for Andor at the top there works for me. Boba Fett, Clone Wars, what is this? Rise of Skywalker there makes sense to me. Phantom Menace. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything there I would really change. Maybe I put Boba Fett here. Yeah. That feels about right. Yeah, no, I feel like that. I feel like that's all right. Yeah, that feels like, as much as there's some S tier stuff in Last Jedi, it just because there's like F and D tier stuff in it too, it kind of has to sit in the middle there, which is unfortunate because there's stuff I love in there. This all feels right to me. This, I almost want to put Rogue One above Return of the Jedi, though I think Return of the Jedi is more cohesive and its emotional beats are a bit stronger. Yeah, I'll put Return of the Jedi there. I think that works. Clone Wars, again, it's kind of like The Last Jedi in the same sense that, like, there are the S-tier things that is, like, but other things that sort of drag it down, but not so much that into, like, putting it into the B tier like The Last Jedi. But I think some of the things that are so good about the thing, I think it, like, I want to put it at the top of A because the S-tier stuff here is S-tier style stuff, but it's not drawn, and it's also not drawn down by some of the lesser stuff, but I can't, in good conscience, if I'm ranking it as a whole, put it in S. So I'm going to put it at the top of A, even though I recognize there's some C tier stuff in it, but the S tier stuff is just so memorable that it's got to be right there. I would also keep this ranking here too. You can know, the one thing I could do is like go back and forth between Empire Strikes Back or A New Hope above each other. I might go back and forth on these two. I put New Hope better just because I kind of like it more as a cohesive whole as a film. It's like if I'm going to watch something just fun Star Wars-y, I'd probably watch that one before Empire Strikes Back, just because Empire Strikes Back is very much a to-be-continued story. But I think both are really, really strong. So I think like you could argue, and I certainly understand people putting Empire Strikes Back. For me, I just think like in terms of like where I'm at sitting with it right now, probably A New Hope a bit above, but certainly I wouldn't fault anybody there, but I still think Star Wars Andor for me goes at the top of all of this. So yeah, this is my ranking of all of Star Wars media. What do you think though? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Are you yelling at me? You're screaming at me like, Jesse, why did you put that there? That's horrible and dumb and you're the worst ranker of all time. I'd love to hear all of that. Beyond all of that, thank you so much for watching, my friends, and I hope you all, to say something sacrilegious to Star Wars, live long and prosper.